we are back now. We were talking about what is the actual situation at the borders of Georgia with regards to the arms.
In both occupied regions of Georgia, Tskhen Valley region and Abkhazia, we have Russian military forces. We had it before, after the breakup of Soviet Union. We had Russian forces there. Now they are there officially. They control the border, and they totally control the government. Everyone is installed by the blessing of Moscow. All of them are the recruited agent of FSB or any other intelligence agency. So they are puppet governments. They are totally controlled by Russian Federation.
In the two republics, the so-called two republics.
So-called two republics. For me, those are indispensable parts of Georgia.
Of course, no. This was my next question, but you are so much coming into the spirit of what we think that is very interesting to discuss with you, because it's very, very direct, and this is very good. Now, what is the relation with South Ossetia? You saw that Mr. Putin signed an agreement of integrating.
This is another illegal document that they signed. Moscow signed the similar agreement with Sukhumi, with Abkhazia in November. Romanian side, by the way, condemned it immediately as soon as it was signed. This is, I mean, I mentioned you that new government tried to be constructive and to try to de-escalate the relationship with the Russian Federation. But unfortunately, the feedback is this, what you just mentioned. This is another document which is directed towards annexation of the Georgian territories, like they did with Crimea.
Now, do you have information about, because before talking a little bit about the war and what happened then and how the civilians were casualties in this war, because I'm sure were situations, dramatically situations in that war. Tell me a little bit about how did you try to, let's say, negotiate or ring the bell to the Western capitals, because the Western capitals are a little bit blind, and they have the ears, put their hand on the ears these days. Was the same in 2008?
Of course, 2008, not only 2008, 2006, 2007, 2008, prior to the war. We were telling, and I was working at that time in our embassy in Vienna, covering OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. I don't remember even 1 month passing without our declaration, our, let's say, cry to European Union, to the West, that this is happening, the war is coming, Russia is preparing for aggression. They will do everything to stop Georgian Euro-Atlantic integration process. Please do something. These are the facts. I mean, this is not the interpretation of the Georgian side. These are the facts, and these facts are well registered in international organizations like OSCE, UN, Council of Europe. We were constantly repeating same thing. Please help us. This is happening, and culmination was, unfortunately, the very famous for Georgian Bucharest Summit Declaration, where very good for us, but unfortunately it was lost. I mean, Russia before tried with the soft power somehow to suppress our wish and willingness towards the Euro-Atlantic integration. But when they saw that nothing happened and nothing helps, then they switched from soft power to hard power, and they invaded Georgia
because
in 2000,
they saw some of the Western countries were powerless, were cowardless, were, you know, either way.
Unfortunately, this was the case. To cut it short, unfortunately, this was the case, and unfortunately, Russia knew that there won't be too much scandal. If the West, in general, let's say, I will not name any country, if the West did the same thing like they are doing now, this consolidated approach like they are doing with Ukraine, maybe there would be a big chance that Ukrainian situation would not happen. But unfortunately, they didn't listen to us. They thought that these Georgians are creating some stories, you know, they are provoking Russia and all this stuff. But
this is ridiculous, let's say, approach from those which are doing this. I know also journalists, I read journalists at that time, and I reread now their articles, which are absolutely ridiculous about how you manipulated the situation and how you provoked Russia. And I was amazed, because a country with 4 million inhabitants, or 4.5 million inhabitants, is starting to provoke a big giant with at least 100,000 soldiers, active soldiers in the Russian military, with huge equipment. Why would a very small country would even try to provoke Russia? It was, in my view, the most stupid, if I can use this word, excuse for some of the EU countries. The United States were having some declarations, but even for them. So that's why I understand you very well. And what you are telling me now, what are you telling to the citizens? Because I know the things you are telling, most of them I know. But what you are telling to the citizens, and also Mr. Mayor, our former director of CRI, was in our talk show, yes. And he told the same things. We informed all the capitals of Europe, and abroad, and America, and so on, and United States, about the danger of Russia and the plans of Vladimir Putin. And he told the same thing with you. And he said, this was not a plan on a night.
Of course.
We are talking about Ukraine, but of course this was about, he said, this was something which has happened in time, and our information, Romanian information, was sent to all the decision makers of Europe and NATO in years. Exactly. And unfortunately, these capitals did not take in consideration your information, our information, and you are telling us that even about the war in Georgia, you are warning the big powers with few years in advance. It's absolutely unbelievable that they didn't do anything.
Minimum. Yes, exactly, you're right. But that means that they didn't want it to listen, or they didn't want it to hear, or they just ignored it because there were some other much more bigger interests at stake. Economical, political.
You are very blunt. Now, I have nothing to add to what you said, because you described the situation very well. But actually, I do have something to add, because you cannot say this. But I can say that countries like Germany, France, Italy, and others have commercial exchanges with Russia, which are very important for the economies of these countries. And in my view, this is my view, I'm not saying it's yours, more or less they were selling the EU project and the security project of the Europe to Russia for gas, for different other type of advantages. But let me come back to Georgia and ask you one thing. You are now in a situation where...
But I'm sorry, if we just to go back to that, I should mention that France, as a presidency of European Union...
Sarkozy went into your region.
Sarkozy, yes, he went, he brokered the ceasefire agreement, 6-point ceasefire agreement, but it's just stayed on a paper. Georgia fulfilled all its obligation, and the Russian Federation never honored most important part of the ceasefire agreement, to withdraw their armed forces to the prior location of the outbreak of the conflict.
Let me ask you,
like any other treaty, you cannot name any treaty, any international treaty or convention that Russia has not violated. Yes. They just do whatever they want. They can sign, and most of the treaties were signed in the 90s, and they just ignore it.
But let me ask you, of course, Mr. Sarkozy, I forgot about this, he went there and he tried to stop the fire and so on. But in the case of Ukraine, France did absolutely nothing. I mean, besides going to Minsk and try to negotiate, the voice of France was absolutely not heard. Italy even is now on a friendship relationship with Russia, and in the meantime, hundreds of thousands of people are dying, or they are leaving their houses in Ukraine, leaving their country and so on. It's the same thing that happened with you, maybe to a smaller scale, but it's absolutely, that's why I wanted to have the Georgian ambassador, because the Western countries, well, the Romanian citizens must know that the Western countries knew what is happening with Russia and its intentions, not only from you and from us, and ignore it because of their selfish interests. What they don't understand, maybe you agree with me, is that Russia is the type of Russia has a type of attitude where they start with you, but they continue with them.
Exactly. But this is the biggest problem. We are saying that Georgia, okay, was not the beginning, definitely for not the end. Ukraine is not the end. I'm saying it right now, and I'm positive. Ukraine is not the end. What should Russia do? Invade, I don't know, Bucharest or Berlin or Paris, that everyone becomes serious in there and they understand what they want? This is but at least compared to the previous case with Georgia in 2008, at least we see the consolidated approach of European Union.
Sure.
We have sanction installed, and this is very important. We understand that no one wants to have Third World War and to respond Russia militarily, but at least economically, what Europe can do,
And
at least with these
yeah.
sanctions and with soft power, why not?
Well,
But if this is my personal opinion, from my point of view, if the sanctions will be lifted, nothing will change. Russia will never withdraw from Ukraine, and as soon as other republics, I will not name any of them, but as soon as other republic will deviate from the line what is dictated by Kremlin, same thing will happen there.
Well, we have Serbia, which just signed an agreement and is not in NATO. We have Moldova, which is not in NATO or the European Union. So I know what you are referring to. Are countries which are not protected by anything in relation with Russia, and more or less are conquered economically now. So maybe Putin doesn't need the guns there because he already has the countries. But
I mean, let's take Ukraine. When they were controlling Ukraine, there was no conflict. As soon as there was the change of government, which was pro-Russian, corrupted government, and Russia was very happy that this government was corrupted because it was much easier to control them.
Absolutely.
Immediately they started what they started.
Absolutely.
Same thing happened in Georgia. When they saw that they cannot do with the government anything, which was in power at that moment, then they tried with all provocations. We had in 2006, they deported hundreds of thousands of ethnic Georgians from Moscow. They installed embargo on Georgian wine, mineral, to hit the economy, to hit the public opinion.
Because we should tell our viewers that the wine is not like in Romania. Well, we also have a big production, but for you it's really an important factor of economy.
It is important. So it is important, and probably you know that Georgia is considered the cradle of wine, the oldest and the oldest. History says that the wine actually was founded in Georgia. We were first winemaker, let's put it in the exact way how it is considered. We were first winemakers, not exaggerating, it is real.
No,
you can visit in London a wine museum where the first hall is the Georgian. I don't want to take anything from Romania, but we were the ones who created. We have more than 200 varieties of grapes, and Georgian wine is very good, which I brought, by the way.
Yes,
and when you try, you have to tell me your frank reaction. How you're going to like it.
I thank you for your gift for the bottle of wine. I will certainly give you my opinion. But going back to what happened in Georgia, let me ask you, what is the relation between your citizens living in? All of them in your view are Georgians. But what is the relation between the people which are living in your country and those regions, Abkhazia and Ossetia?
I tell you, unfortunately, there were lots of mixed families, especially in Skin Valley region. But first of all, we try our best to enhance people-to-people contact. We have our special strategy, governmental strategy towards occupied territories. We invite the students from those places to study in Georgian schools and universities. We give them free healthcare. But unfortunately, Russian intelligence services are doing their best to minimize the people-to-people contact. That's what they do. It's very difficult to cross the occupation line.
Do you have a border that must be passed with passports?
Of course, but it's very difficult, and they try their best, let's say, to not to allow. Of course, Georgians cannot travel over there, but for the people living in the occupied territories to travel to Georgia, it's very difficult for them. but still they travel, and they have all the benefits from our healthcare system and education.
And these are mixed families or friends?
Most of families, what Russia did, unfortunately, and these are the most devastating consequences of 2008 war and previous wars, is that they actually conducting ethnic cleansing. In Schinvali region in 2008, which is worst outcome, I think, is that they totally burned down and destroyed the houses of ethnic Georgians.
Really?
They just kicked them out.
In the two regions?
Exactly. In Abkhazia, and it's not my opinion, but it's substantiated by the fact-finding mission that was conducted by European Union in 2008. And before, in 90s, when we had war with Russia in the region of Abkhazia, they even conducted genocide, and it is written and confirmed by the UN documents. So in both cases, what is the difference and what is most difficult for us to tackle is that they conducted ethnic cleansing in Schinvali region, and in Schinvali region especially there are no Georgians. In Abkhazia there are still some Georgians in Kali region, which is closer to the occupation line.
Ilya, this is crucial for the Romanians. I will tell you why, and I became very serious because we lived in peace for many years, and Romanians forgot, or they don't have a memory of a war. That's why I want you to describe a little bit, because what we have to understand is that this can be happening also in Romania.
Exactly.
At any moment, because the war is next to our door. Our relations with, and it can be coming from Russia or any other country which has such a dictator or regime which is not so democratic. And I want you to describe a little bit before, few minutes before we take the next break of commercials. Describe a little bit what really meant the war and how it affected the civilians in those areas. Because Romanians will watch TV, they look at all the channels, they feel safe and there is nothing happening. Well, actually it's not really like that, because the world is changing, the rules are changing, and we are not in the theme of the book of Mr. Meyer was insecurity. This is the title. Yeah. So the Romanians must understand that we are not living in a secure world anymore. That's why I would like you to describe a little bit the trauma and what happened in your regions.
Trauma is very big and harmful. We have 500,000 IDPs from Abkhazia and from Schinvali region. What is unique, for example, we consider that all the conflicts around the world are unique. You cannot count it together that Moldovan conflict or Nagorno-Karabakh conflict or Georgian conflict, it's same. No, all of them are unique. And what is the difference and real uniqueness in the conflict between Georgia and Russia is that in both cases, in Abkhazia and in Schinvali region, majority were Georgians. We formed majority, and due to this action and this policy what Russia had in 90s and nowadays, they kicked out majority of population from their places where they lived from centuries.
And where did they
I can show you later our viewers can see the maps. Ancient maps, not Georgian, not Russian, but European maps, where it is clearly shown that Abkhazia, never ever Abkhazia was the part, independent or part of any other country. It was always Georgia.
What were the abuses committed by Russians? How were they committed against the Georgians living there? You said that they were moved out. Where?
They will live in different parts of Georgia nowadays. Only in Tbilisi, in capital, we have more than 150,000 IDPs, and in different regions.
So practically, they took the people living in their houses and sent them to the capital or to the
old Stalin approach: no people, no problem. Or no person, no problem. So they kicked out. So now they are saying that, this is a will of Abkhazian people to be independent. Yes, but who are the Abkhazian peoples? They are out.
Very good question. Yes.
Very out. So when probably it's my personal view, but I'm sure this will be the view of all Georgians. The real referendum on independence in Abkhazia, it will, if it ever happens, should be after all the citizens who were living there before to go back. And of course,
how are these people?
You know the outcome, what will be.
Of course.
Same thing
obviously.
in Tkhinvali region.
Tell me something. You mentioned 500,000 people leaving their regions, the two regions, and being taken out by Russia from their houses. How are they living in, I mean, they left with what? With nothing, basically.
With nothing. They were crossing the Caucasian mountains. We have the footages, and your viewers can see the footages, how they crossed, without nothing, just with empty hands.
And how do they integrate now in the different
It's difficult,
places
of course. Can you imagine? You leave your house, you leave the graves of your ancestors, which is very important for Georgians. You cannot go there, and somebody else from Russian military, I don't know, general or colonel is living there in their houses, which was inherited from the ancestors throughout the centuries. You can imagine now what is the situation of these people. But the hope is there, and for sure we are 100% sure that we will get back our territories, and we will be there sooner or later. Because this was the case all the time. Throughout our history, we were occupied by different powers. Last 200 years by Russian Empire. But we always get our territories back, and we will do it.
We take another break of commercials, and we come back with,
on this positive note.
with more details on the positive note. But we needed to know also these details,
Please.
because they are important. Publicitate.